They did not just steal money, they studied grief like a doorway. Widows were promised love, safety, and a second chance, then left with empty accounts and ruined lives. One story ends darker than anyone expected. Number 8. Kate Kleinert and the fake Facebook surgeon. Kate Kleinert ended up at the White House, warning others about a crime that began with a man on Facebook who said he was a surgeon. Before that, she was a widow in Pennsylvania. Her husband Bernie died in 2009, after Kate had quit work to care for him through the final 2 years of his life. That loss left a quiet opening. The fake suitor stepped into it with messages, attention, and a profession built to sound trustworthy. AARP reported that the scam cost her about $39,000. Later reporting said the damage went further. Kate lost her life savings, she lost her home, she lost her dogs. The fraud did not just drain an account, it stripped away the daily structure of a life already reshaped by grief. By the end, she was nearly penniless and unhoused. Then Kate made the private harm public. She became an anti-fraud advocate and spoke at the White House, putting a widow's name and face to a scam that is designed to leave victims silent. Number 7. Massachusetts widow and the fake Tanashi Chipo account. A counterfeit Zimbabwean passport helped move $55,000 out of a 72-year-old widow with advanced Parkinson's disease. She was first contacted on Facebook in 2016. The man said he was a building engineer in Florida with a son. Then he claimed he had a construction contract in Malaysia. Over October and November, he pressed her for wire transfers, saying the money was needed for foreign taxes and equipment repairs. He also said he had fallen ill and needed hospital bills paid. Prosecutors later traced the mule account to Fortune Ikaroji, also known as Imutinyan Ikaroji, a 33-year-old naturalized United States citizen from Nigeria. He had opened the account under the fake name Tanashi Chipo. On December 3, 2020, he was sentenced in the District of Massachusetts to 1 year and 1 day in prison with supervised release, restitution of $66,767, and forfeiture of $75,500. The name was false. The damage was real. Number 6. Florida widow defrauded by Wisdom Anyobeno's ring. After 49 years of marriage, a 71-year-old Florida widow said she was lonely and looking for connection. That made her a target. Federal filings tie her case to the romance fraud network linked to Wisdom Ogenekaro Anyobeno, which used fake personas on Words with Friends, Plenty of Fish, Christian Mingle, and Our Time to reach older women in multiple states, including widows and divorcees. The scammers kept the contact going, then pushed urgent money requests and fabricated crises until more than $324,000 was gone. She described herself as a trusting Christian, and that trust was used against her. The damage did not stop with the transfers. She later reported severe depression, insomnia, and financial collapse. The scheme was built to turn grief into access and affection into leverage. It did not need force. It only needed time, attention, and a lonely person willing to believe a lie. That is how the ring worked, and how it kept taking. Number 5. New Mexico widow and Sean Bartlett. A New Mexico widow, 56, was pulled into a romance scam in July 2015 by a man calling himself Sean Bartlett, who promised marriage and said he was an engineer on lucrative oil contracts. Every request came dressed as a business expense, an urgent cost, a problem only she could solve. Behind that false courtship, prosecutors traced a laundering path. Court records show Uchenna and Lemchi opened a personal account at Amagi Bank on September 13, 2015. Then opened a fraudulent business account just 16 days later for a company that did not exist, J Auto and Machine Parts. The money moved through that account as part of a broader romance and business email compromise scheme. On June 6, 2024, a federal court sentenced Lemchi and entered restitution and a money judgment. The widow was not just manipulated by a fake fiancé, her trust became the entry point for criminal proceeds. The promise was marriage, and the machinery behind it was designed to steal. Number 4. Franklin Nwadialo's Giovanni scam. A widow lost her home and her life savings after trusting a man she believed had brought love back after grief. Prosecutors said the man was Franklin Ikechukwu Nwadialo, a 42-year-old Nigerian national who used the fake persona Giovanni to run a romance scam that targeted 8 victims, many of them older, widowed, or divorced. On June 22, 2026, he was sentenced in United States District Court in Tacoma, Washington to 5 years in prison. Prosecutors said the scheme brought in about $3.5 million. Nwadialo had been indicted in December 2023 on 14 counts of wire fraud and arrested at a Texas airport in 2024 after arriving in the United States. The lies were tailored to pressure and drain. Military deployment overseas, a fake $150,000 military fine, funeral costs for a father, school tuition for a son, and requests for investment help all served the same end. Prosecutors warned that some victims could still face taxes, fees, and penalties after liquidating homes and retirement accounts. Giovanni was not a person, he was a method. Number 3. Rhode Island widow and General Matthew Weir. A 76-year-old widow in South Kingstown, Rhode Island, refinanced her home, sold another home in Massachusetts, and sent more than $1.4 million to a man who did not exist. It started with a game, Words with Friends, before escalating into a romance scam built around the invented identity of General Matthew Weir. He said he was a United States Army general stationed in Afghanistan, then claimed deployment kept him from accessing his own money and needed urgent help wiring funds. That pretext kept the requests coming. Federal records say the money moved across the United States, including about $660,000 into accounts controlled by members of the conspiracy. The case was part of a $5.8 million romance fraud network led by Wisdom Ojenikaro Onyobeno, a 44-year-old Nigerian national living in Sandy Springs, Georgia before his arrest. In October 2024, Onyobeno was sentenced to more than 10 years in federal prison. For the widow, the loss was already written into deeds, bank records, and retirement savings. Her homes became the collateral for a man who never existed. Number 2. Nellie Idawu's Utah widow targeting ring. More than $6 million disappeared through a romance scam built around older women who had already lost a spouse or a marriage. Prosecutors said Nellie Idawu, a 39-year-old defendant from Provo, Utah, was tied to the ring, which ran from 2017 to 2019. The targets were described as mostly widowed and divorced women over 65. The entry point was familiar: fake dating profiles, patient messages, a relationship that seemed to arrive late in life, when trust carried a different weight. Then came the emergency, a sudden bill, a blocked account, a crisis that needed money fast. Investigators said victims were pushed to send funds under pressure, often through multiple people and accounts, making the money harder to trace and easier to drain. Idawu was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but the case shows the deeper design of the operation. This was not only romance fraud, it was a system that found widows and divorced women online, studied their hope, and turned it into a payment plan. Number 1. Laura Kowal and Frank Borg. Laura Kowal was turned into part of the fraud itself. She was a 57-year-old retired healthcare executive and widow from Galena, Illinois, when she met a man calling himself Frank Borg on Match.com. Between roughly 2018 and 2020, she lost nearly $2 million, according to financial records reported by CBS News. The romance turned into demands, then coercion, then instructions to launder money through fake companies and bank accounts she created herself. Court filings say Frank Borg directed her to open shell companies and move the money, making the victim a participant in her own defrauding. In August 2020, Kowal disappeared. Her body was later recovered from the Mississippi River. Law enforcement tied one early $75,000 payment to money mules in the Chicago suburbs. Jennifer Gosha, Samuel Aniuku, and Anthony Ibeki were linked to moving romance fraud proceeds. Aniuku received a 10-year prison sentence. Gosha received 3 years of probation, including 6 months of home confinement. The fraud ended in the river. So did Kowal.